What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to make a second video today, and I'm going to be continuing my tips and tricks videos on salary cap today. And today we're going to be talking about one of the most common questions that I am always asked in a Madden franchise mode. And that is, why does it say I have salary cap, but I can't re-sign my players? And I can't tell you guys how many times I've heard this same exact line over and over again. And it is the simplest explanation for this, and it is something that I wish everybody would get to understand, and I'm going to try to make this as quick and simple as possible for you guys today. So whenever you go into your salaries tab, for example, it's going to tell you how much salary cap you have. So I'm going to go to my team here, go to the salaries tab, and it's going to say I have $38.5 million in cap space. But the exact explanation for you guys, like I said, I want to make this as quick as possible. The exact explanation for this for you guys is the cap space number that you see on this screen is for this year. And so whenever you scroll through that 2020 column, it is counting the salary for this year versus your salary cap, the rookie reserve, your cap penalty, and all that stuff included. But what you have to understand is the players that you have to re-sign are signed for that year. And so their salaries are already being deducted, and this cap space is for this year. However, whenever you are going to re-sign a player, it is deducting their future cap, their future contract from their future year. And so if it is saying that you have $38.5 million in space here, but it's only saying that you have $10 million to re-sign players, it is because in the future year, you don't have $38.5 million. And like I said, the explanation is super simple, and you can see it right here, the comparison between 2020 and 2021. What ends up happening for pretty much every single player in the game is their contracts increase from year to year. Contracts are backloaded, especially long-term contracts. So you can see that J.J. Watt's contract goes up $2 million from 2020 to 2021. You can see that Laramie Tunsil's contract goes up $5.3 million from 2020 to 2021. And so that right there is a difference of $5 million. So you can already assume that you don't have $38.5 million in cap space next year. You have $33.5 million in cap space. And that is not even considering all of the other differences in contracts. Deshaun Watson's value goes up next year, so on and so forth, all the way down. And so whenever it says you have $38.5 million in space, that is to sign players this year. You could go out and sign guys to one-year contracts worth $38.5 million total. However, in the future year, you're probably seeing less money, which is giving you less money to re-sign players. And so keep that $38.5 million in mind. Whenever we go negotiate with these players, you'll see that I don't have $38.5 million to negotiate with them. Up in the top left, you can see after I give him this contract, he would have $18.2 million in cap space. Let's say I take this all the way down to the lowest contract I could possibly offer him. Over a one-year deal, subtract 550,000 or subtract 700,000 here. It still says after I offer him that contract, I would only have $20 million in cap space. That's because it is considering your cap room for next year. It is making a calculation for you of how much your contracts are going to be worth next year. It's adding up all of those increases in salary and saying, look, yeah, you have $38.5 million this year, but you're signing this guy for future years. Their contract is going to go into those future year slots, and so you have to be able to have the money in the future to be able to re-sign these players. And so, $20 million there. Let's keep this in mind, Vernon Hargreaves, because I want to show you guys another test to show you exactly how this works. So Vernon Hargreaves, if I wanted to re-sign him to a contract, it's going to apply to future years. And so the cross comparison there that shows exactly how this is working is we go to the salaries tab and we look at Vernon Hargreaves, for example. So let's go to our cornerbacks. and let's go to look at Vernon Hargraves, you guys can see that for 2020, he already has a contract of $1.31 million. That $1.31 million is being deducted from that 38.5. However, if you sign him to or you re-sign him, you sign him to a future contract, it is being deducted from your future cap. It is not being deducted from that 38.5. That is where the difference comes in, and this is why people have a lot of confusion surrounding this, and this is why I get this question all the time. Why does it say I have $38.5 million in cap space, but I don't have that when I go to re-sign my players? And it's pretty straightforward. Most of the time, this is the case. Now, there are a couple of other examples that I want to hit on real quick. I'm not going to be able to show you them in the video, but there are a couple of situations where, and actually I can show you one of them in the video, but there are a couple of situations where these things could prevent you from having the necessary cap space at a certain point in time. And so another thing that you need to remember whenever you're re-signing contracts is that number in the top left, this is point number 2, that number in the top left, that $18.2 million, is how much cap space you have left over after giving this guy a contract for future years. And so people get confused on that. They see that number of what cap room is left over and they think, oh, that's how much I have in space. But as you guys can see, as I reduce the amount of money that I'm offering him, my amount of cap space after the contract is signed goes up. And as I increase the amount I'm paying him, the amount of money left over after the contract goes down. So that's extremely important. Now, the last thing to mention here is that there are times where it will glitch out and not give you the proper amount of cap space. So let's say, for example, and this is the best example I can give you, let's say, for example, you are in off-season free agency week 1. And let's say you have $2 million in cap space, but you have a huge salary cap penalty. Let's say you have $50 million in penalty. If you clear that cap penalty, a lot of times it will glitch out and it will not immediately recognize how much cap space you get back from clearing that penalty. Or if you cut a player, sometimes it will not immediately recognize how much cap space you get back from cutting that player. So there are times where you have to advance the week for that change to register. And so my tip here for you guys to end on this video is to always make sure that you do 2 things if a situation is happening. Number 1, on a regular basis, make sure that you get all of your things done prior to when you need them done. So if you are planning to give cap clears to the players, the users in your league, make sure you clear their cap before you hit the off-season re-signing phase, because otherwise it will potentially glitch out and prevent them from actually being cleared and having the amount of money that they need to utilize in that week. And then tip number 2 is to always back out of the franchise, and if it takes it, close the game out and load the game back up, and sometimes that will be enough for the amount of money to register over to what it should be. Because I've heard a lot of times, and I've seen a lot of times, that you go to sign a player, it's saying, okay, I have $18.2 million in cap after this deal, but I just did some transactions that should free up cap for future years, so why isn't it registering that difference? Well, if you stay in the file, sometimes it's not going to register that difference on your screen. Sometimes you have to back out of the file, close the game down, come back in, and then it'll show the increase in cap. So those are a couple of things that you can do if you're running into glitches where it's not showing you the right amount of money. But just to recap, the difference here, if it says that you have a certain amount of cap space on the one screen, on the salary screen, but on this screen it's saying you have a different amount of cap, that's because it is current year on the salary screen versus future cap room on this screen in the top left. So hopefully this video is helpful to somebody. Hopefully somebody out there can find this useful, and hopefully this will answer the question of why does it say I have cap space but I really don't have cap space to re-sign these players, because this is a question that I get all the time, and like I said, it's pretty straightforward, not a lot of complicated detail to it or anything like that. So hopefully you guys will find some use in this video. If you do, make sure you leave a like on the video, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification button for all my future videos, and make sure you guys comment down below with anything you guys could use help on, anything you'd like to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next video.